Are you ready to be unmessable with? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to Be Unmessable With, the podcast where you get the inspiration, strategy, and coaching to be unmessable with, no matter what life throws at you. And now, your host, Jocelyn Herman-Saccio.
Welcome to the Be Unmessable With podcast, and I am your host, Jocelyn Herman-Saccio. And my guest today is not only one of my favorite people, not only one of my favorite clients, but she's also a genius when it comes to sleep, which is one of the biggest things that messes with people. So I'm so happy she accepted my invitation. Her name is Mollie Eastman. She created a company called Sleep is a Skill. So that kind of says the whole thing, but she's got a podcast. She's working on a book. Her whole mission in life is to give people agency with their well-being. She is a plethora. I haven't used that word since like the SATs like 40 years ago, but a plethora of resources and information about sleep and how that impacts your performance and your well-being. She's got a newsletter. She's incredible. And I'm so happy that she said yes. So welcome, Mollie.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, Jocelyn. And the feeling is wildly mutual. As you know, I'm always in awe of your skills, talents, and ability to support certainly myself, my husband, many people in my lives on achieving their dreams. So amazing.
Well, I love working with you, and I'm so happy that you're here because so many people struggle with this issue. If you could tell people a little bit about how you ended up doing this.
Absolutely. Yes. I hope that this story can support people in hearing potentially themselves in this kind of example of what happened for me with my sleep and why I decided to then devote my entire life to sleep. And part of it came from my own rock bottom with my sleep. And even if people are listening and they're like, I don't have a rock bottom with sleep, my sleep's fine, my sleep's whatever. I
Well,
hope
coming soon to a life near you is a rock bottom with sleep. Trust me.
Totally, exactly. It's at some point in all of our lives, for the most part, we often experience some difficulty with our sleep in some way, shape, or form. And mine was actually part of my rock bottom, lowest point in my life was linked up with sleep. And so I now think of my life in a 3-part series. I think of it as truly before I went through this period with my sleep, this rock bottom moment, during and after. And the
Mm,
before was littered with lots of labels and narratives around how I related to my sleep is simply a series of things that I would say. I would say I'm a short sleeper, I'm a night owl, it's in my genes. Narratives like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead,
I have that one. I've done that one many times.
Exactly. Pull yourself out by your bootstraps. Come on, mind over matter, all these sort of things that I would say. And it really, truly wasn't too much of a focus in my life because I thought that there wasn't much to do about it. I thought it was about this hand that I was dealt. And it was more just surviving the results with my sleep. And so, what this ended up looking like was I was often the last person to fall asleep at sleepovers growing up, and kept getting more and more pronounced with my habits into throughout high school, college, and then in my early 20s, living as a serial entrepreneur in Manhattan, burning the candle at both ends. I eventually then had a real period of insomnia, difficulty falling asleep, staying
Mm.
asleep, or early morning awakenings is part of that definition. And I was experiencing all 3 of those all at once. And
What's
so,
an early morning awakening? What is that?
yeah, so that's really just those periods. So you might be waking up throughout the whole course of the night, and then you might have times where now you're just waking up early in the morning, and now you're up for the rest of the rest of the day. And
Gotcha.
frustrated, presumably for many people. And certainly that was what was going on for me. That was hitting at all angles of sleep. The difficulty in being able to count on my ability to both fall asleep, stay asleep, and not just now being up for the rest of the day. So this period of my life was this complete rock bottom, and what that looked like at some of its lowest points, I was actually traveling in the midst of this, pairing jet lag into all of it, and lots of stress from entrepreneurship. And at its lowest point, I went to the doctors and left with sleeping pills. And in that moment, just a sense of am I stuck like this? Is this my new future in life? I'm going to be dependent on a whole cocktail of pharmaceuticals in order to do this thing that you would think would be innate. And what ended up happening out of this was this new kind of idea of, all right, if I'm going to figure this out, it's occurring for me like I gotta take this on with everything I
Right.
got. And so went down the rabbit hole, and not just for philosophical musings or something, but because I felt like I was truly losing my mind, and I felt like I need to figure this out. This can't go on like this. So in the process, spent a lot of time, energy, effort, money, all the things. And I did a lot of things that did not work. And over time, I discovered a number of things that actually not only worked, but completely transformed my results in this area. And so on the other side of this, what came out was this ability to not only sleep reliably, but start to move into a conversation of sleep optimization, getting great and reliably and quantifiably great sleep on different trackers in both consumer grade and in lab. And the results were life changing. I could not stop talking about it. So, what ended up occurring and just kind of organically were these small groups. And I started then seeing, all right, we've got something here. And so then created Sleep as a Skill. And today we have, the number 2 sleep podcast. We've got, for 6 years running a weekly newsletter with lots of readership there for sleep obsessions, we call it, online courses, have a particular niche in high stakes poker. And I share that just because they're a great example, and I can get into
I
more of
love
why.
that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Oh, can you hear me okay?
I can. Yes,
Oh,
I can hear
perfect.
you.
Okay, great. Okay. And so from all that, I share all that not just to share those things, but to really illustrate that I was someone who had it that this was just not even an option for me, not even on the table. And now to be someone who is getting to experience what I am now calling this state of being addicted to feeling good, being able to wake up reliably and feeling rejuvenated, rested. I didn't even know that that's what life could look like. And so my commitment on the planet today is to help support others in this journey. And if people are listening and they're like, oh, that's not for me, I'm sleeping pretty well, I still assure you that there are things that we can do to up level your results in this area.
I always think about you, Molly. Like every day I have something that happens that I go, oh, Molly said to not wear sunglasses so that the rays of the light come in and then you can have melatonin. And I mean, like grab onto little things you say, don't have you get an alarm clock so that you're not using your device at night to check things. Cause I do wake up almost every night. I wake up at least once.
Yeah.
My husband's a snorer and it does wake me up at least once. I've learned not to develop a rage about it, and I just turn him over and go back to sleep. But that was like a skill to learn, to be able to go back to sleep, because it used to be when I first started going through menopause that I would wake up and then that's it. I would just be like, I should be
Yeah.
sleeping. This is horrible. Like, how am I going to go back to sleep? And I can't take a sleeping pill because then I'll be sleeping in the morning and I have to get up for work. It was like a never ending vicious circle.
Yeah.
And just learning how to go back to sleep was something that altered everything for me. So, what's one of the biggest things that people come to you with in terms of what they're struggling with their sleep?
Well, you couldn't have set that up better, because it's exactly that. It's the wake ups are one of the most common things that people come our way around, is this frustration around the fact, okay, I'm waking up 3 a.m., 4 a.m., etc. And for them, then they really might be struggling with, what the heck do I do? Now I'm awake for extended periods of time. And why? Why is this happening? Maybe they slept well in the past, and for whatever reason, now they're having this fragmented sleep. And this can be really, really frustrating for people. And one thing that's kind of, as a quick tangent, noteworthy, is that we're actually in the midst of being able to put together what is called your sleep age. And this is using AI the same way people might test for chronological versus biological sleep, their age, right? So people test for this for their health and well-being. Now we're putting together, almost there, to be able to have people test for their sleep age. And what is one of the characteristics of an older type of sleep is fragmented sleep. And this has a lot of implications. And so we want to get to the source of, is this kind of like a normal wake up? It's not wild to wake up every so often, but Is it a lot of wake ups? And are we awake for long stretches of time? We want to get to the source of that. And the reasons for that are many. I can certainly get into those if helpful.
Well, absolutely. Give us at least three. Give us the top
Okay.
three reasons why
Yes.
people wake up.
Okay, well, perfect. So, number one, you spoke to one beautifully of your husband and the snoring aspect.
Oh,
So,
yes, that is just, I know so many people are talking about separate bedrooms. I don't want to do it, but it
yeah,
is maddening. I have earplugs, I have things, I have,
100%. Okay, so snoring, sleep apnea, sleep disorders, which by different accounts, there some people will rank it as over 80. Other accounts, like Mount Sinai, ranks it as over 100 sleep wake disorders. So there's a lot, and many people are just running around having no idea that they're dealing with some sort of sleep disorder. And so whether it's for themselves or maybe their bed partners or kids in the bed, so all of those disruptions, those are some reasons, and that's actually our number one most listened to podcast is about a sleep divorce and whether or not to have that. And now it's aiming to be rebranded by Dr. Wendy Truxell, who wrote Sharing the Covers, in case anyone's struggling with this. It's a resource for you right away. She's trying to rebrand it to be a sleep alliance in the times when you might explore that, especially if it's an acute situation where maybe someone's on a different shift or
right.
scheduling, right? And or they are dealing with something like snoring, sleep apnea, and we're in the midst of trying to get at the source of that, straighten that out. So if anyone's dealing with snoring for themselves or their partner, now I am biased. I would like to see a future where every single person is tested for sleep disorders, not just once, but multiple times throughout their lives. Sleep is something we do a third of our lives, on average, 26 years spent asleep. When we're planning out our New Year's goals, you and I will do that. You've been masterful at helping to support that and winning those games. Well, in a new year, about 4 months of that year is going to be spent asleep. So it
That's
behooves us
insane.
take a look
4 months of the year is
at it.
spent asleep. And even when you're awake, half the people are asleep because they're just going through life on automatic. So it's like
Totally.
really like half your life or
Yeah.
more is spent asleep. That's crazy.
Oh, crazy. And yet so few of us are looking at this. And if you are thinking, oh, well, if I really had something going on, my doctor, I do checkups, they probably would have caught it. Sadly, not so
No.
accurate, because we know that even out of Harvard Med, the average doctor is getting about 2 hours, sometimes less than 2 hours of training in sleep. And so this is
I
really
thought you were going to
problematic.
say
So
2 hours
then
of
it's not
sleep. I
necessarily
was like, the
malicious. This
average
is
doctor
a
gets 2 hours
systemic
of sleep. That's
problem
pretty
that they're
scary.
not able to necessarily know some of these red flags to spot, to then say, oh, okay, you might want to get tested. So it becomes a matter of learning about this in the meantime until we figure out this systemic problem, to give ourselves advocacy agency to make a difference. So first, testing for sleep disorders. Number one, because if you are having difficulty breathing, mouth breathing, snoring, apneas, etc., that's just one set of sleep disorders, and there's many more: restless leg, periodic limb movement disorder, narcolepsy, etc. So we want to make sure we're not stepping over that. Then below that, a very common reason that I see is blood sugar instability. So we know that by different accounts, at least in the United States, we see numbers like 88% to 92% of Americans dealing with some form of metabolic dysfunction. And so
Wow.
what we tend to do, since we gravitate at Sleep as a Skill towards technology, to help support really giving us some numbers to see what are we dealing with. So not only are we tracking individuals' sleep, but we're also having them often wear continuous glucose monitors, at least for a period of time. And it's just something you put on, say the back of your arm, for around 14 days, ideally about a month. And then we get a sense of, are we crashing throughout the course of the night, and
Interesting.
really reliably in those early morning hours, and starting to go into this kind of dawn effect where we might see a lot of that drop. And of course, this is a stressful experience for the body, and it's saying, "Oh, geez, I gotta restore this. This is out of alignment," and so you can have a bit of an adrenaline response, and that's certainly going to be the type of wake up where now it's going to be harder to get back to sleep if you're surging with this kind of stress response. So next we deal with that. Then underneath there, one of the other components that we're looking at as well is inconsistency of our sleep schedules. So many people are dealing with this. It's often called social jet lag, but I think it needs a new name, almost like self-created jet lag. You don't get on a
Oh, I'm
plane.
so glad you're bringing this up because I was reading in your bio, about social jet lag. I was like, what is that? I got to ask her about that. Here it is.
Oh, perfect. Okay, because it's known as social jet lag. The reason for this is the thinking that especially in a day and age of traditional 9 to 5s, then during the course of the week, people might be like, oh yeah, I'm pretty, consistent because I have to be, because I have to get up and go into the office or whatever. And then when social obligations are gone, like on the weekends, then they call it that because now we see people compensating for their sleep deprivation from the week, and they're making up for it or trying to do that on the weekends. And so what people are dealing with, and many people are reliably sleeping in 2 hours, 3 hours, et cetera. And what happens there is then not only so you're waking up later, and then you're often not hungry at your same times, or you probably already missed your normal like breakfast time or whatever. And now you have metabolic jet lag on top of that. So now you're eating later. And these are all these things are having a cascade of effects of a circadian dysregulation. And so what we're looking to do is restore that workability by bringing in consistency. And this is why we do so much. One of the reasons why we do so much with that light dark piece, like you were alluding to, because it is the most powerful time giver or zeitgeber to the body to tell it what time it is and what to be doing when. And it's not just a purely clock system, but those clocks have a whole set of things that they're doing, including telling the body about certain hormones to be creating at the right times. Because we hear so often people saying, well, I was fine until I went through, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and those changes for their hormones, and not just for a phenomenon for women, but certainly for men as well. But one of the things we see is this total dysregulation of proper hormonal cues happening at the right times throughout the course of the day. So beginning with consistency is where we start. What's a practical application of that? A consistent wake up time, 7 days a week, with a swing maybe plus or minus, say, like 30 minutes. So those are some things as to why wake ups might be occurring.
But that's something that somebody could implement right away. Like out of listening
Oh,
to this, you could just set your alarm every day for 7 a.m. or whatever time, works for you. But, I notice I naturally get up at the same time every day, pretty much at the
great.
same time every day. And on the weekends, I have to like force myself to stay in bed because like I'm ready to get up. So like I'll watch TV or I'll do it because my husband's still sleeping. So I
Yes,
figure, oh, I'll wait. But it is sort of like a automatic without an alarm. It's 7 a.m. I'm up. So now
totally.
what?
Well, I'm
So,
so glad to hear that. Well, and part of the now what that we like to bring in for the listener is so now they're waking up at the consistent time. And if you're listening, for many people, bringing this in, you might be like, oh, yeah, sure, let me do that. And then, 2 or 3 days in, you're like, the novelty's worn off, and you're like, no, I don't want to do this. Please keep doing this, because eventually, give it just a little bit of time. It will be often for many people kind of painful because you were compensating and making up for that. You had a method that wasn't maybe the best method, as we're discovering, because there's still all these other problems. But you had a
right.
method, and now we're kind of taking that away from you from a short period of time. However, it is worth working through that, because eventually then this will bring about an automaticity and support a healthy cortisol pulse in the morning, and then a healthy melatonin pulse in the evening. If you're moving around those poles of those pulses by waking up at different times and going to bed at different times, then the body just doesn't have a strong circadian rhythm, and it will have a lot of fallouts. Now, I would begin with that, but then I would also pair that anchoring process of getting up at about the same time with then pairing it with bright light exposure as quickly as possible. I know you were just sharing that. It's perfect, like getting outside without the sunglasses and
It
all of
makes
those
such a
things.
difference. I mean, just to
Right?
your whole mood and
Makes such a
energy level
difference.
the whole day if
Exactly.
you can take a
So
walk
that's
in the
what we're
morning for
looking to
20,
bring
30
in.
minutes,
And then
it's night
people
and day, so to speak.
Night and day, exactly. Yes, and that's what we're actually looking to create is more of a clear binary system for the body because we are diurnal creatures, meaning that we're meant to be active by day and at rest at night. And we do see, sadly, the deleterious effects for people that are dealing with shift working, particularly rotating shift work. And so when we're being active at the times when traditionally we would have been sleeping, those can bring about some struggles. Now, that's not to say we know we depend on our shift work as far as for societal function. We are very grateful for the people that are going to be in the hospital at 2 a.m. when we
Yes.
need them. So we want to support them. So for those people, it's even more, maybe more, but very important for all of us, but particularly if you're dealing with something like that, to start to understand these principles and the skill set of getting great sleep.
Makes total sense. And as you know, you're listening, everybody, you can hear why I said she's just a genius and she has a plethora of information and resources. It's literally insane. Every time I talk to her, I learn something new about sleep. Who knew there was that much to know about sleep?
Who
But sleep
knew?
is a skill. So given this show is called Be Unmessable With, what I'd love to ask you is a time in your life when you dealt with a situation that could have sent you down for the count, that could have had you be messable with beyond salvation, so to speak, and you rallied. You transcended to the world of being unmessable with and creation. And what was some time like that? And what did you use to get yourself to the other side?
Oh, so good. Well, certainly, I already shared about the issue with my sleep, and that for me was just a huge thing in my life to point to of, okay, if I got through that, I can get through anything. But that was one period of time. Another more recent period of time, which thankfully I have you to thank and for helping to support me through this period was two aspects of things. So one, very close family member that was dealing with some really, really serious mental health issues. And so for me, it was taking on a lot of what was going on for them and a lot of fear because we had to, as a family, kind of rally together and help support getting them into the proper hands to support that. So they ended up going into a mental health facility, but it was very stressful time. And it started to be something where it was really kind of weighing on me of how can I, because it required a lot of kind of showing up, figuring out kind of hard decisions, akin to if you have someone in your life that's using drugs or something. At certain times, you have to maybe close the door to enabling some of these behaviors. That was some of what was going on during that period. And you were beyond helpful throughout that. And then paired with that time, I was also dealing with my husband, whose dad, and I was very close with. He actually dealt with getting a diagnosis of ALS. And this was quite shocking because it came out of nowhere. And within 2 years, he had passed. And during that time, he had, that family had really acted as kind of this surrogate family for me. And so my husband and I have been together for 13 years, and he was just a fantastic human being. Just felt like this was a extra family, and yet then to suddenly just have that so disrupted, paired with what was happening at home, and having my business really taking off, and then not going into what I've seen for so many people go into a reliable thing of, well, then this happened, and then my life, took another
Yes.
turn. It didn't go like that, which was phenomenal because then I was able to really rise to the occasion, handle what needed to be handled, and allow my business to continue to grow in the direction that it was growing and expand and help support as many people as possible instead of just like, getting on the bleachers during this period of time, which was so aided with your maxim of this being unmessable with, because there's a lot of times where I think I would have just kind of fell over, just and been down for the count. And to have that in my kind of as a mantra or a support structure was phenomenal.
Well, having the community that you did through the extended family and your family, and then having a coach, which I'm a coach, but I also have coaches because I think it's so important when you're dealing with something, even if you're not dealing with something challenging, but if you're dealing with something that you want to create, it's so valuable to have another set of eyes that can see what you can't see. You
Huge.
know, it makes a difference
Absolutely.
for me, I know, and I know for you, and that's, part of our relationship together is providing that for
Yeah.
each other. But, I love what you say about agency for
Mm.
people's well-being, and I wanted you to talk a little bit more about your vision for that. Like, what does that mean to you? What would that look like if you accomplished that in the world? What would people have access to that they don't right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am thankful for you in the support throughout my business as well for continuing to carve out a bigger and bigger and bigger game as I continue to grow and expand, and as to just keep up leveling what's available for as far as impact is concerned. So this agency was able to really help get at its core for me of what really moves me. And what moves me is this concept of getting people kind of out of the proverbial passenger seat as it relates to their sleep. And instead of just being like mystified or confused or maybe often resigned, frustrated,
Yeah.
annoyed, victim, all of these states that we can be in. And I was, believe me, in just about every state of that at some point when I was struggling with my sleep. And the difference that's available to know that it's possible to absolutely get into that driver's seat, make a fundamental difference with our sleep results, and know that this is available to all of us, which I think is just, I truly believe if the whole world was to get this message, that we would have a entirely different planet. Why? Because one of the things that we see is that there's not a single area of life that's not impacted when our sleep is, one, not working, and we see the negative effects of that. But when we step into workable sleep and optimized sleep, then we get to have that kind of spidering into virtually every area of life. How is that exemplified? Go to PubMed, put sleep and just about anything that matters to you: cardiovascular health, cognition, aging. If you want to have a thin waistline, you want to, deal with,
Well, now you're speaking my
midlife.
language. Thin waistline. Okay, wait. Now I'm listening.
Boring, wrinkles, waistline. What? I'm here. Exactly. And so, I mean, and you also work with my husband, Blake Eastman, who is an expert in reading people. We find that even poor sleep affects our ability to read faces and properly interpret kind of social cues, interactivity. I mean, just the list is endless of how this will show up in our lives. And it might just be this blind spot that many of us have just not tapped into what's possible. I truly can stand here today and say that, knowing what I know from the research and on the ground, that if sleep was a drug, it would be like, no, this is too good to be true. I mean, my God, we got to, or pull it off the shelves. It's got to be some sort of side effects or something, because it's just so pervasive.
Wow. I am so thrilled every time I hear you talking about what you're so passionate about, because it isn't just about sleep. It really is
Yeah.
about all the tentacles and where that reaches into, which is everything. So I love how you speak about optimizing sleep rather than fixing
Right.
sleep, which is a different world. And that's,
Yep.
the work that we do together, the
Totally.
difference between being messable with and being in a reaction to fix something versus what are you creating with your sleep? What can you elevate in your life, optimize in your life if you were to create a sleep pattern or a sleep habit or a sleep skill that actually empowered what you were up to, not just
Yeah.
something I get enough sleep, it's fine,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. I mean, this is just top of mind because I just released a podcast episode with a friend of mine who wrote a book called Unbottled Potential, and it's about an alcohol-free lifestyle. And listen, if anyone's listening, they're like, "No, I don't want that." Okay, fine. But what I want to say is that what's
Well, my
interesting.
husband has an alcohol-free lifestyle when he's alone because I drink when I'm with him, and then the alcohol is there, but just adjacent.
Right, adjacent. Exactly. Well, one of the things that her approach is that I think could be almost lended to sleep is she'll speak to this concept of, we have this opportunity when we take out some of these things that might be dulling our senses or leaving us feeling in a kind of a limited state the following day over and over
Yeah.
again. that this could impact our ability to reach our full potential and kind of a Maslow's hierarchy of, needs or what have you. Now, I think that some of the similar rules apply with sleep, that if people are, it can be kind of this, that old goldfish saying, like the goldfish doesn't know it's in a dirty tank. It's just like,
Yes.
that's its reality. I think certainly when I was dealing with poor sleep, I didn't know that what was available to me was to wake up every day feeling energized, feeling refreshed. I used to also wake up with headaches. I used to just wake up dragging. It would take me so long. I'd put on the sunglasses, giant things of coffee, cranky, the whole thing. And I
I don't know
didn't.
what you're talking about.
Who can relate to that?
No,
Oh my gosh.
know what you're
Uh,
talking about. Yeah. That
exactly.
must have been so bad for you and the people around you.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's available to all of us. And I think it's just this gives us suddenly, especially I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are looking to take on really big things in the world. And all of us can do this, but I'm just saying that there's this ability, this kind of unfair advantage that gets tapped into when we make friends with our sleep in this way.
I love that. I can relate to the idea of the goldfish that you're talking about when it came to my hormones. I didn't know I was
Yeah.
in menopause, but I wasn't sleeping. I didn't care about anything. I was just like, whatever, I guess this is what life is now, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And the minute I did hormone replacement
Sure.
therapy, actually 1 week later to the day, 1 week later, I felt like a different person. I was like, oh my God, I feel like a human being again. I want to buy a pair of jeans. I want to wear heels. I'm like, it was like a different universe. And I have a feeling that's what you're pointing to,
Yes.
and it's like magic. It's like unleashing magic. And I feel like now I'm going to cry. I feel like what you're doing is enabling people to unleash the magic that they didn't even know was missing
Mm.
in their life with the work that you do.
Oh, well, so well said. Thank you so much for saying that and for hearing in that the access to empowerment for people. And so couldn't have said it better. And you point to something really important because that's one of the aspects that we need to make sure we're addressing for our sleep is our physiology. And so with our one-on-one clients, we for every single person we work with, they are getting sleep tests to make sure that we're not missing those sleep disorders, like I mentioned. And then the second part is a large battery of blood work, urine analysis, so we can go in more deeply on this particularly hormone issue among other physiological things that might show up: thyroid health, low vitamin D, B vitamins, iron issues, et cetera, et cetera. So if people are dealing with those things, and then that's yet another blind spot. So we can do all the bright light in the world. But if our hormones now, by the way, those are all connected. So we'll see those things all work nicely in tandem. But to your point, if we don't have those clear numbers behind us, it can just be really challenging to get those results. And there's some real impacts that are had and felt in our sleep and otherwise. So really important.
Yeah, in our lives.
Yes,
It's it
exactly.
I just love everything about what you do. I love you. I love
We'll
your
definitely catch
husband.
you.
I love, I know we're like the mutual love situation here.
Yes.
But where can people find you? And I have to say to everybody, you must first of all sign up for Mollie's newsletter, because it's like a thesis every week. I mean, you get so much information in this. I say to her, how much time do you spend? Because there's so much information and it is just like jewel after jewel after jewel. But how can people find you? How can they work with you? What do you want to leave them with?
Oh, I love that. Well, thanks for the call out about the newsletter. Yes, I would love to have everyone listening get on that newsletter. It's called Sleep Obsessions for a reason. If you can't tell, I'm pretty obsessed with this topic. And it will come out reliably every Monday. We've never missed a Monday now, going on almost 6 years. So please get on there. And what's cool is every single email, then myself and my team are getting and responding to. Always, always, always. So please get on there. And then in addition, if you go to sleepisaskill.com, there we have a sleep assessment that you can take and just share. Like, what are you dealing with your sleep? Is it the wake ups? Is it the difficulty falling asleep, et cetera, et cetera? And then get immediately results and support and resources that can start to get you in action with this, like today, to make a difference with your sleep. And then beyond that, we can also get you our weekly podcast. So we've got loads of experts. So we're well over, I don't even know, like 160 or something episodes with tons of different experts. So whatever you're dealing with, we are tackling that. And then beyond that, if you're like, okay, yeah, that's nice, and I also need or would like more support, we have a few things. So we have a sleep wearable audit. So if you are tracking your sleep in any way, shape, or form, we can go over your stats there. We do have a very large database of wearable information outside of research. So this is on the ground to look at what can move the needle for people from a sleep performance and optimization perspective. So we can give you some of that information right away. You can join our 8-week long cohort. And so what's great about that is we're tracking you with the Aura Ring throughout that whole process. So you come in with a particular set of sleep stats and you leave with all new numbers and tools and all the things. And then finally, if you're like, I really want some hand holding, I want some real support here routinely, then we have one-on-one options as well that also bring those sleep tests and blood work and all the things. So we're not missing things or stepping over what's really there. Like in your example of the hormones, we want to make sure we're addressing all aspects that are impacting your sleep.
So it's sleep from soup to nuts is what we're
Yes,
talking about here with
exactly.
Mollie Eastman. Okay,
Well
very
said.
great. Thank you so much for being here today. And maybe we'll do a follow-up because there's so much information and there's so many aspects of this that we could delve into and
Totally.
explore. But for now and for everybody, I will have all of Mollie's info in the show notes. And thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you on the next episode of Be Unmessable with the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joss. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us in this episode of Be Unmessable with the podcast. And every time you join us, I want to make sure that you leave with real value. And I want to offer you a free workshop with my colleague, Liana Nielsen, who's a certified nutritionist. And we did a workshop on how to be unmessable with your well-being. So if you ever deal with being messable with your well-being, which most people do, sometimes that's the first thing to go in terms of your practices and your disciplines. This is an opportunity for you to get recharged and rejuvenated and revivified in the world of well-being. So click below and get instant access to this free workshop.